So after the failure of October 7th, there were, of course, set up investigation and probes to look into basically what has happened, what has failed. Today, or sort of a month ago, we started seeing some of the first results of those investigation and what sort of has happened, some of the recommendations. Today, we'll talk about what we sort of know, what should have been done differently, and also I think many of the sort of really wrong ways that I think Israel has been looking at both the failures and sort of what really is at the core of the issue, as I would say. Uh, now, I'll go to. I have two people from Israel today, so this should be a much better episode since we have people who actually do live in Israel. And we will start sort of with October 7th and just generally what I think should have happened because, at the failure of October 7th should have pretty much meant that everybody, top to bottom, should have resigned. Maybe not on the day off, but at some point, definitely. It's sort of reminded me, one of the biggest crises we had in Slovakia, which meant that prime minister resigned, defense minister resigned, and a chief of police resigned. And that was because one journalist was killed. Now, I don't want to sort of undermine that situation, but that was really bad. And Slovakia is a really corrupt nation. So even in like a Eastern sort of European, so even in sort of this, not really perfect democracy, sort of not the best system, even something like that made it so pretty much everybody had to resign and nobody could like even touch that situation. But with October 7, it seems like some time ago we had the chief of staff Herzi Halevi resign, and now we have a new chief of staff. But besides that, not that much. Alex, what do you make of the failure of October 7 and sort of the responsibility that was taken slash not taken?
Well, I think it's been really, I mean, Herzia Levy didn't resign. I believe he just is retiring with a fat pension, which makes he's actually old for Haramat normally, sorry, the chief of staff. A lot of the times, I mean, soldiers can retire from 40, sometimes 45, depending on how sedentary your job is. Um, I mean, so him taking retirement and resigning, yeah, it's the same thing. But in any event, I think it's a bit funny calling this an investigation. Yeah, it's not an investigation. It's each unit protecting itself and trying to shield itself from investigation. I mean, the most phenomenal aspect of it, I think, was when the Shabak, who came out and said, we couldn't have human intelligence sources. It's really hard to get human intelligence into Gaza. What? We live right there. We live right beside them. And what about the Mossad? Do you think it's easy for them to get agents into Iran and recruit sources? No, it's not easy. Think it's easy for the Mossad to get into Lebanon, right? It's really not easy. And also, the accents and everything are so, I mean, it's not like James Bond, but recruiting sources. Hello, our prisons are full of these snitches. Well, we can't send a couple of our bad boys back and to get if and yeah, and even then, like the idea that the whole investigation is the Shabak wants to protect itself. Sorry that I'm saying it, but Shimon Matai wants to protect itself. Amman wants to protect itself. Every unit wants to protect itself. It outstanding, outstanding, passing the buck. And if they can't protect themselves, if they actually are like completely at fault, like Amman is, right? Like military intelligence is, then they say, it's the political echelon. It's Bibi. Really? I outrageous. The entire thing is outrageous.
Yeah, now from the former Chief of Staff Herzl Levy, I have one quote that I sort of want to read. He has said, talking about October 7, saying, "The responsibility is mine. I was the commander of the army on October 7, and I have my responsibilities. I see every soldier who made a mistake as also part of my responsibility. Since October 7, Simchat Torah, I make it a point several times a day to confront failure directly. We have soldiers who fought heroically. We hear the voices on the radio during the inquiries. We have female soldiers who continuously reported with professionalism and calm under the last moment. This is the IDF." And that is that sort of like taking responsibility while not really doing anything, sort of saying, yes, it was my fault. Can we move on now? Like I already said, it's my fault. I mean, Michael, what do you make of this whole situation, both the failures and the investigation?
Well, I completely agree with Alex. This is not an investigation. This is a sort of show and tell defense, just to show that you did something. And asking the fox to guard the hen house and then report on the hens is ridiculous. I mean, the fox eats the hens. So I was alive during 9/11, and the colossal intelligence failures in the US were astonishing. But I have to say, from what I understand, and it's a fair amount here because I'm pretty close to it, the intelligence failures leading up to the cultural intelligence failures leading up to October 7th, and the miserable, wretched response of the IDF for the next 7 to 12 hours, which led to many, many more deaths, are really pale. They really make 9/11 look much better than it was. 9/11, and ironically, 9/11, we had at least 2 female, I believe they were FBI agents who had an eye on the hijackers who were learning how to fly without, and specifically said they don't need to learn how to land. So they told the people that they were being trained, I believe, in Michigan, or at least somewhere in the North Midwest in America, and they were under. And the FBI was watching them because they were foreign people that had a lot of question marks from terrorist countries. And those 2 women actually told their superiors that there was something fishy about the whole thing and they needed to look into it. And like what happened in Israel, they were squashed. Now, I understand that there's several women whose job it was to look at what was going on the border with the fence, with the rather meager, pathetic fence that was separating Gaza from Israel, along with the fact that cameras were not working, and along with the fact that I believe 2 separate battalions whose job it was to guard that fence were moved to the West Bank because of concerns about West Bank terror, and nobody replaced them. But that at least 2 and possibly 3 women called out to their superiors that there was something going on, that there was a major Gaza operation being planned. The behaviors were not normal. There were too many soldiers on the border there by the fence, and it needed to be looked into, and they were shut down completely. The fact that cameras were not working, and Israel had reduced its reliance on human intel and just human observation. Every year for the last 10 years, they've gone down to technology, except it wasn't working, and they knew it wasn't working. They knew that the cameras were not functioning, and they did nothing about it. And it was a holiday, of course, big surprise. Israel has been attacked many times on holidays. It's exactly when enemies like to attack you. So, and then following that, the IDF was completely unprepared, totally unprepared. What some of the soldiers who were the soldiers had an amazing heroic response that knew about it. They drove in many cases, into their death, drove in to try to protect people with minimal rifles and everything, with really no armaments. And they just went in there to do the best that they could. This was such a disgrace. I mean, the despondency, and I can tell you, we were stuck outside the country because we could not literally get back into Israel at the time because of this October 7th. that people had lost confidence completely in the IDF for the first time since the War of Independence. And the failures, they started culturally. I know this has been a long-winded answer, but you asked a big question. This was a cultural failure of not listening to your people, downplaying everything, and assuming that Hamas was appeased. Now, the Hamas appeasement we can get into later if you want to, about how much Netanyahu's hand was in that. But the IDF clearly was not prepared for this. And like most things that screw up, it's a little like the Columbia shuttle disaster blew up. 4 or 5 things had to go wrong. There's enough redundancy. This was a colossal failure of multiple redundancies. Simple stuff. I'm sure there was some not so simple stuff that we'll never hear about. But obviously, cameras on security fences need to be functioning. Obviously, security fences can't be a joke. They have to be real. The bulldozer that took out the first security fence was really not a powerful machine. The fact that there were no alarms following that, the lack of battalions, that no one was replacing the people. I mean, and the fact that the higher ups just didn't listen to what was happening on the ground. The arrogance was amazing, and that is truly Halevi's fault. But it's a culture that permeated the entire thing. The Shabak is as responsible. They should have been aware of this. This was a colossal operation involving over 6,000 Hamas attackers. This is not small. And these are not really well-trained, Iranian Guard type troops. These are roughy, scruffy terrorists. So I can't. The fact that there hasn't been as much fallout as there clearly needed to be is a disgrace, and we'll get into that more as we go. I've talked long enough. Thank you.
We have a super chat from Jonathan. Thank you so much. He says, "Team Alex." Well, thank you, Alex. Or thank you, Jonathan, for a super chat, and thank you, Alex, for being here. Someone in the chat says, "Get behind Bibi for now. Bibi needs your backing for now. Have an inquest after." You could maybe make that case on October 7th and maybe the weekend off. We are, more than 500 days in? We are 500 and so days in. At what point does he, suffer the responsibility for what he has done? The fact is that, maybe in absolute emergencies, those are not the time to sort of question the leadership or have a change of leadership. But we are so far in, and there is no even, it's not even in the sort of, are we even going back into Gaza, or are we taking the ceasefire deal and are we basically sort of giving up on Gaza already? So the question is, are we even going back into Gaza, so that we would need someone in charge to sort of lead through that? I think people can look back. We did one show on basically should have Netanyahu resigned on October 7th, and I don't know if you guys want to comment on sort of what you would have wanted to see, maybe Alex.
So the investigation, right, into October 7th, Netanyahu should want to do it because he's actually, he's probably vindicated from it, right? Because we know the players, right? And I think it's a real mistake calling it an intelligence failure, because the intelligence was great. Yeah, the intelligence, I mean, if you think about all of but the problem is, I do want to also raise a little bit of defense, right, on behalf of, it is very difficult sometimes, if you're an analyst, to analyze all of the pieces and then to put it all together in a picture, right? Because you had a lot of, but it's the people at the top, okay? It rots from the top. I heard Tamir Heyman myself. I was at the conference personally watching. He is the executive director of the Institute for National Security Studies, whatever, okay? I heard you say with your own mouth, it's on video as well, 2 months before October 7th. I keep hearing all these I'm translating and paraphrasing. This is what he said. And it's on video, so there's a transcript. I keep hearing all these rumors, okay, that Hamas is going to attack. But I don't need to hear the intelligence because I know their interests. Oh, do you? Frightening. You are the head of Amman. You were the head of Amman for 3 years. Amman is our military intelligence, okay? So you are responsible for, the analysts are amazing, the amazing analysts, phenomenal. You're responsible for putting all the pieces together and coming up with a story, okay? That is your job, right? That is them. And as you know, as Michael was alluding to there as well, the political nature of, you know, the IDF becoming is not a, should not be a political organization. It can't be a political organization. It simply can't. And the high politicization of the IDF, but when we say IDF, you know, I mean IDF, and I just mean the general defense establishment. And really, I mean anybody from I would say a brigadier general and above. Okay, I consider them the defense establishment. All the soldiers are amazing. Our soldiers, phenomenal. Our intelligence soldiers, phenomenal. There was no intelligence failure as far as I'm concerned. I don't know how there could be. What I mean, there was a failure of, there was a human resources failure, right? By having you people at the top. And the fact as well that it's so crony-ish that you can't, you know, you can't be a person who is not, you know, the head of these fancy schmancy units, and who, you know, is, unless they pick their own. So they don't have alternative, you know, who should become a major general? The best soldier, right? Obviously. It shouldn't be just because you have played the political game correctly and you've reached the top. And that is dangerous, because what does that mean? It means I'm a lieutenant colonel. I want to get promoted. I'm only 42. I'm a major, I'm a lieutenant colonel. I want to become a brigadier general, major general, maybe even go all the top, go the way to the top. So you need to have a flat structure for intelligence to be able to come out. I can't be frightened to come to you with bad news, because if I come to you with bad news, I might be scared about how I'm going to be promoted, right? So it's truly terrifying that more people haven't been fired. Herzia Levy, it's a really good start. Ronen Bar from the Shabak, he needs to go. You need to go. What do you mean you can't get human intelligence into Gaza because it's too hard since we did the disengagement? Okay, so give it a shot. I mean the idea that you can't get human intelligence into Gaza. What do you mean? What do you mean? We're right there. We speak this, you know, our Palestinians are, you know, Israeli Arab citizens, right? They speak the same kind of Arabic, same accent. It's not like going to Lebanon. Lebanon's harder. They have a different accent. It's so difficult even to listen to them make excuses for themselves. And really the problems with the politicization of the Shabak, and also, you know, with making military intelligence such a massive unit, you know, when now we find out, oh, you know what? We don't have enough infantry soldiers to have a war, to have a protracted war. Oh, well, you didn't think about that? That maybe, you know, maybe we might need to fight a war one of these days? Who are you people? Really, I really think, like, be better if it was like the Japanese, just go out and just shoot yourselves, really, and let whoever it is take over. Genuinely, I have no confidence in these individuals, right? None whatsoever. And I'm just so glad that I'm not a part of it. Yeah, I'm so pleased that I'm a civilian, right? I don't need to be connected to this catastrophe, which is what a lot of people must feel, right? A lot of people must feel like that. That it's very lousy. I really feel that there has to be proper cleanup. I would just get rid of everybody from Lieutenant Colonel and above. Brigadier generals, you guys can stay. The rest of you, you all have to go. You can't be just promoting your buddies. What does that mean? Right? Imagine if it was me and I promoted all of my friends. What are we going to have? Well, we're going to have an army of people who think exactly the same. What do people who think exactly the same have a trouble doing? They have trouble collating evidence, putting it all together and coming up with a different story, because it's all us scratching together, being like, yeah, like, why do they keep doing that? Like, why are they not more like us? What? I don't know what to say. It's very and there should be a criminal investigation. Them doing, we checked and we're not guilty. I don't know what is that. And them right now trying to then shift the blame onto Bibi and going, the Qatar files, the Qatar files. What are you doing? You guys are disgusting. You guys, we'll get to Bibi. Don't worry. Yeah, we'll get to him. Right now, we're worried about you. Stop trying to pass the buck to other people. It's revolting. We'll get to Bibi. Stop trying to throw this garbage out there about there'll be an investigation of Bibi when there will be an investigation of Bibi.
We have a super chat from Bulmos. Thank you so much. He says, Robin Hood man in tights. Maybe if I tell you the bad news in a good way, it won't seem so bad. And also, someone in the chat said, learn from what went wrong. Again, I think people are sometimes too nice to authorities. This is not like IDF is not some startup that leaked passwords of its users or something. The people died because of the failures. People were kidnapped. Terrible things have happened because of the failures that we knew about, and they didn't do anything. One of the even when we talk about sort of the military strength or the something that is unique about Israel, something that was unique about Israel in the past, and it still is the fact that the military was more professional. It wasn't like Arab armies that were basically, well, this is my brother, he's going to be general now because he's my brother. And when that starts happening in Israel, or sort of the same thing, well, this is someone agrees with me, Israel will no longer be. That's one of the better things in the West, is the fact that we do have this sort of separation of politics, or at least we try to have separation of politics from the military, from, let's say, certain parts of the civil service. So, people should be interested in our constitution course with James Valiant, because we recently talked about how basically the civil service worked in America, and the fact that it used to be that when president got into office, everybody from like janitor to the top staff got fired, and those were replaced by someone who was in our people. And we learned that maybe some certain service should stay in power no matter who is sort of in charge, so it's not so politicized. But then when that starts sort of going away, Israel, again, this is not even that's something that you might choose or not. Practical, it's so impractical that this is what sort of destroys capabilities of a nation. Michael, anything? I want to go to one of the things that was sort of decided by the new chief of staff, but anything you want to add to? Anything more to add?
Yeah, maybe just to think about the words a little more. I mean, I can understand Alex saying it's not an intelligence failure. I agree there wasn't a problem gathering the intelligence. I totally agree. It's again like 9/11, when we gathered that there were Arab men that were learning how to fly. It didn't seem right, and the fact that they actually said, "I don't need to worry about learning how to land," was on the radar screen. And we won't go into a lot of the other failures. It was a failure in 9/11. It was a complete failure of imagination, and to some extent a failure of, at least we're told, departments to connect and talk to each other, which is why we created this colossal Department of Homeland Security. So hopefully information is truly shared. But it was a failure of imagination, not intelligence gathering per se to a large extent. Now, I would argue, and I share Alex's absolute and your comment too, Daniel, that this is not a startup. I mean, the IDF, it is a disaster what happened. It is Total incompetence. If these were a doctor, they would have been sued and had their license removed. They'd be out of practice. And if they were a lawyer, they'd be disbarred. The fact that they're in charge of protecting people and they failed miserably, and most of them haven't been held accountable yet, is a disgrace. And one of the big blemishes on this entire thing. And also this crap about how long it's taken to get around to it, as if we're in some kind of war of existential, existence since October 7th. After a few months in Gaza, we are no longer fighting that war. There's another war being fought, and there's a lot of politics involved and a lot of crap being fought. But there's nothing to do with why we couldn't change out our leadership in the IDF and the Shabak. And by the way, we can talk about why Mossad is not really culpable, at least not in my mind. It's a different job and a different time frame. But the Shabak for sure, and the military intelligence and the preparedness of just the standard infantry, et cetera, for something like this. The enemy is right next to you. This isn't like 9/11 where the enemy figured out a clever way to go after us by flying, basically doing what the Japanese did, which wasn't very clever because it's been done before, which is flying planes into structures. That had been done. It is disgraceful the American intelligence apparatus couldn't look back into history to the last war that we finally won, we actually won, and say, maybe the Arabs are thinking about the same thing the kamikazes were doing. They didn't. So they screwed up and 3,000 Americans were killed. And trillions of dollars were lost, and 2 stupid wars were fought, and so on. And you all know the story. The IDF, it's way worse, I think. First of all, the numbers proportionately are way worse. 1,000 Israelis gone, and America is 33 times as big as Israel. The 1,200 Israelis were killed, another 250 later, plus the soldiers and everything. We're talking about 30 times that. We're talking about almost 40,000 equivalent Americans being killed. Okay, in October 7th, if you translate it to American lives, if you go by population. That is unbelievable. It's unfathomable. And that's what the IDF's failures did. And the enemy was right next door. And it's an enemy that has attacked over and over again. Yes, Al-Qaeda attacked over and over, but it was usually driving cars into building basements and trying to set off bombs underneath the buildings. This attack was very similar to other attacks. It was a little more impressive. It involved more people. It involved missiles, which we've dealt with here in Israel a long time. And it involved a stampede of animals coming across a fence that was knocked down by a little toy bulldozer, and no response from the IDF. So I share Alex's, I absolutely, it is unbelievable. And people I think citizens demand nothing from their government. I think citizens have become so immune and listening to these people that we hire to protect ourselves. We pay a lot of taxes here. And number one thing for a state to do is protect us, and they failed. Full stop, they failed. There is no excuse for the failures, especially when you know your enemy is right next to you. And that's what I would add. I emphatically agree. And I would just say the intelligence failure was a failure of putting the intelligence information together to come up with a possible scenario that would have led at least to more scrutiny in the area.
Someone says fighting on 7-8 fronts, how is that not existential? Well, because Israel was able to fight it easily. It was never it was very rarely a practical problem. When it came to the Houthis, every time Israel bombed them, they shut up for a few months until we had to bomb them again. Israel was able to take out Iran in 2 attacks completely easily. Syria has collapsed under its own weight. Hezbollah was wiped out. Gaza was also technically completely taken out if Israel was willing to actually finish it. Again, this was never
but it is existential if we don't do it. It is existential because then they're going to be like, okay, we can go for it.
Yeah, it's
no question about that.
Yeah,
I would just sorry to jump in. I agree, and I'm glad you said something because this notion that Israel was fighting, yes, it was on 7 fronts. Israel was not fighting. I want everybody on this podcast to please go read what Israel did. Israel was fighting with 2 hands behind their back, with 1 finger on a few airplanes, knocking on the rooftops for the longest time, letting Hamas know we're coming and blowing up a few buildings. This is not, yes, we sent in our troops. Yes, we had a lot of kids killed. This is nowhere near what Gaza is next to us, folks. Israel sent 130 planes to Iran and had zero major issues with that operation. That's what Israel can do. Israel was not fighting. They were battling a little bit. It was almost a suppression here and there, partly because Biden, and I believe mainly because, frankly, I mainly think it's Netanyahu, his inability to come down definitively. But this notion that it was existential, I'll tell you when it was existential. When those of in Tel Aviv saw terrorists still running around, because they had come all the way up from Gaza, all the way up to Tel Aviv, and there were a couple caught here in Tel Aviv. And the original plan was to take out Tel Aviv and also go after Jerusalem. That was the existential part. That was over in about a week. And please, folks, understand how powerful Israel is, but you got to have the intelligence and the will to do it.
So I agree totally with what Michael's saying, and yeah, it's and also like the idea that we even need to fight in Gaza. We control their borders, you know, just seal it off. We don't even need to fight. But I do actually want to just have a quote from a colonel who wrote an article 2 years ago, and I remember this very profoundly. So he basically writes a long letter criticizing the fact that we're relying too much on intelligence and we're not relying enough on actually learning from our mistakes, and it was scathing. So he then writes, so he says that it was aimed at the commanders and the overdependence on intelligence. He says, next year there will be terror attacks at this is in 2022. Next year, there will be terror attacks in Ayos Junction, stabbing attempts at Damascus Gate. Rocks will be hurled at 3 specific locations on Route 443. And in 2020, there will be another terror attack in Halamish. He then writes, this article was again published in 2022, but he's speaking before. He says, this document, his letter, has to be archived and pulled out in 2 years, and then we'll see who's the fool, me or the intelligence addicts, is what he called them. And I think that that's exactly what it kind of is, though. If you only believe in defense as your doctrine, only defense, and you only believe in, oh, we're really high tech, we have great signals intelligence, we'll hear them talking about it. What did they do? Sinwar talked crap on the phone because he knew that our signals intelligence was great. So he talked rubbish on the phone to his friends, and he wrote down his commands on a piece of paper. You know, that we have an underground wall, okay, right? Which I'm sure is great. So what did they decide to do? Oh, we'll just get our bulldozers and drive right through it. It's, you know, and also, you can't win a war if you're only fighting defensively. I mean, I don't even know anything about sports, but everybody knows that if you're only fighting a defensive play, you're going to get scored on. You're going to lose. You have to be offensive. You have to be aggressive sometimes. So I mean, I will actually share the article and with Daniel, and maybe he can put it in the comments of this kind of broadcast, because it's frightening. It's very, very scary, because these people are still, a lot of the people, instead of being fired, they have they failed up. They've filled up. So, and then again, like even Tamir Haiman from he wrote an article, like Tamir Haiman is the guy who was previously head of military intelligence, who now has his own little, you know, think tank for defeatists. He wrote an article, and by the way, these think tanks really affect people, okay? Like, that's why I'm always promoting Amir Avivi, Brigadier General Amir Avivi's think tanks, and the other think tanks who advocate for offensive action, right? So he's still affecting policy. Don't get me wrong. He's all his buddies, okay? They're friends. So he writes something like, well, you know, Is there really an alternative to Hamas? Well, there is not an alternative if you don't think there's an alternative. I mean, please go home. It's what a shame. And again, I agree with Michael that I don't know. I guess the Mossad's failings and corruption, we'll hear about that in due course as well. Yeah, the Mossad's failings, we'll hear about that later. Because the Mossad doesn't have anything to do with Gaza. So it's nothing to do with them. And this is our domestic policy, right? It's the internal security services that handle it. So we'll hear about that. We'll hope when we see the massive invasion from I don't know where, then we'll find out about the Mossad's failings, I guess. If at all. I have no idea, you know. But if the
They did a good job
corruption,
on them. They did a good job with the beepers in Lebanon.
Oh, I love the Mossad. I'm sorry, guys. I love you guys. I really do. I haven't heard any bad rumors. I'm sure there's no corruption. Well, the fact that the military intelligence that failed so badly, the fact that they all go on to the Mossad, it's not great. It's a sad indictment.
Yeah, I want to add to sort of the idea of sort of existential threat when it comes to Israel and sort of does it have it or does it not? Well, in some ways it does, but the existential threat is not sort of Hamas or Hezbollah or Iran. It's Israel's unwillingness to actually recognize and fight those threats. That is what is actual. Like we've seen when it comes to any sort of Israel fighting any of these, or even all of them at once, we still see that pretty much they have nothing on Israel. And Israel did that in the past again and again. It's only right now the unwillingness to actually fight, the unwillingness to go in and finish off Gaza, go into the West Bank, finish off Hezbollah completely, not just a little bit, get rid of the Houthis and get rid of the Iranian regime. This is what is lacking the most. And this is what is, I think, the sort of long-term existential threat is the fact that at some point Israel will give up, not from, basically from actually, you know what, why even fight? Basically, a sort of attitude. Now, one thing that the new chief of staff, Ayal Zamir, has done, especially with this sort of coming out, is he canceled all sort of the war, how do you call it? Sort of like a large scale basically release or sort of holidays leaves, basically that when soldiers from the IDF take a vacation that they all leave on specific holiday, reasoning that Israel always gets attacked on a holiday, be it Yom Kippur, be it the Simchat Torah, which was what happened on October 7th. Not to mention it was also Saturday, so Shabbat. Now, when I saw that, it's sort of a thing that's like, yeah, that seems sort of like an easy thing to do. Yeah, maybe we should not have like a specific day, which is basically Hamas can invade us today, and we're gonna be weaker. But also on some level, it feels like that is not the fundamental issue that I think needs to be dealt with, and it feels the sort of similar to, we are doing something like, we are, doing something, but it's that sort of a thing that doesn't actually deal with anything and is sort of trying to just hide or trying to cover up what actually needs to happen. Alex, what do you make of the new chief of staff and of this decision?
I don't know him personally, but I've heard he is not from the class, right? He's not from the same class of people. I mean, I already know. He's not from special operations. He's not from military intelligence. Okay. We haven't had a guy who is from his particular unit in a very long time be the head of the IDF. I already like him. That's it. Okay. He's not with the same stupid strategic concepts as the rest of them. He seems to also want to fight, which is good. But again, it would be great for him. I hope he has a lot of great success. But he has to again he has to start cleaning house. That's it. Start cleaning house today. And also I would also start cleaning house in. I don't think he can fire the head of the Shabak. I mean, I know he can't, but he can't hire. So, they have to. I don't know who can fire the head of the Shabak. Maybe the Minister of Defense can. I don't know. But they're like they're the worst, I think. And I mean, they're the most corrupt, most ineffective, just most terrifying. I mean, really, I thought you guys were supposed to be a group of thugs that sat around smoking cigarettes and being like the tough bad boys in the room. To hear the Shabak are a bunch of pussies, ugh, what a disappointment. Seriously. It's not the Shabak I remember, right? I mean, it's not that, I mean, come on, think about them. You think about the Shabak, you think about you, come on, you understand a little bit about where the hell you are, yeah? No, the Shabak thinks that the fight is fought in Ramat Aviv. Yeah, that's it. Okay. Beyond that, we don't know. Yeah, we have. What do you mean? Do you mean go to Gaza? Oh, we don't want to. Our agents, they don't want to go and develop. You have to. They don't want to develop human sources there. They don't like it. It's not very nice. It's kind of icky. And same thing. It's like, we don't really go to Ramallah and develop sources, work them. Can't we just interrogate them over here at the off-our prison and just hope they tell us the truth when we call them up on the phone like we did on October 7th? Yeah. These guys. No, I have no faith. I mean, no faith. I mean, I really hope. So faith is not faith is not a strategic concept either. Yeah. I need to have confidence. Yeah. This is what I would say. I think I should maybe think about the job. I think I would be very good at it. I've seen a lot of Fauda. I would be very good.
Oh, yeah.
To be honest, the only thing that I think you would need to do is just let the soldiers do their jobs. Let the soldiers do their jobs. You guys, what are you doing? Involving yourself in politics, telling people to have strikes from the army, to not turn up to reserves. You guys are disgusting. Really. And I have to say, there's also a real I don't respect. I mean, before it used to sound like a good thing to say, I'm from the Amman. I'm from the Amman. Now I think you're from the Amman. You're a liability. Okay. That means that you've failed up. Okay. I wouldn't want to work with you. I would be very worried to work with you. I mean, the thing is that they actually think that it means something to be a graduate of these special units. Okay, you can go and have a nice startup. Great. But it's almost like saying, oh, but I was the CEO of Bernie Madoff Investments. That's what you are. You're the CEO. That's what you are. It doesn't mean anything. But when I hear of a soldier who was, I don't know, a group captain maybe in Golani, I say, you're a solid individual. Because you actually, I hear that you're. I don't want to shit on 8200 because I think they're probably pretty good. But when I hear that you're from Amman, really, I had that exact reaction today. I said, "Oh, we can't. Well, I don't want anything to do with this guy. He's from the Amman unit." Can you believe that? It really, and so that gives me some pleasure, actually, that we get to that I hope none of you get any jobs ever. I hope all of your think tanks fail. I hope nobody comes to your bullshit university courses. Really go and work for Black Cube or whatever the hell, and just go. Leave us alone.
Just to add, apparently when it comes to the head of Shabak, only Prime Minister can dismiss them, and even that has to be with the approval of the government and consultation with senior officials. So it's a long way. Usually those heads of those specific departments, they well, you just need a prime minister pretty much. But yeah, it's not the easiest thing. Now, going to you, Michael, what do you make of the decision to sort of hold the sort of large scale, basically on this specific day, all soldiers, or not all soldiers, but sort of a lot of the soldiers are going or are taking their vacation.
No, it's just part of the incompetence and the failure of imagination and hubris, incredible arrogance. And lives were, I mean, lots of lives were lost, and it terrified the country. It just has destroyed the economy. We have no travel industry in Israel, just starting to pick up again. You know, it's a mess. And like you said, and I think it's really important for us. I think across the world, we've let our governments become excuse factories, excuse for their incompetence. In the US, we have a ridiculous budget problem. We have a debt that's killing us. We had no plans until recently to fix it. In Israel, we have excuse after excuse. You know, the Haredi draft, which was passed a while ago, still hasn't really been implemented. It's a mess. Excuse. The investigations into October 7th were supposed to be farther along than they are, and I completely agree with Alex that this is not a real investigation. This is just some shit that people do to appease the population and look like you're doing something, which is what governments are really good at doing. It's just we the public put up with so much crap, and we expect nothing from our elected leaders, really, and they can't even protect us. It's absurd. I want to go back to one thing though, and that is the new leader will be, I hope, will be good. He sounds very good. He wants to go in there and eliminate Hamas, but of course he then quickly says, but of course we have to get the hostages back. Well, right now there is no possible way that anyone on the planet can figure out to do both at the same time. If you're going to get the hostages back, you're not going to eliminate Hamas, because they've got the hostages wrapped up tight, and they're going to kill the rest of them. So until this country, Israel, gets its act together and figures out which is more important, to allow for the next Hamas attack, or to accept or to allow for the 25 or so living hostages and the dead bodies of the rest to come back. Those are the two terrible choices we have to make. And it is again a failure, a strong failure, in my opinion, of leadership in Israel, that we have zero clarity on what's going on. We have all this bullshit going on, pardon the language, of people going to Doha and negotiating, sort of, and Hamas won't accept anything except phase 2, and Trump saying that go and do what you need to do, and there's nothing going on. There's a lot of talk. It's getting to be almost like we're back in the Blinken era of Biden and Blinken. Let's go all talk with each other and feel good about these trips that are on taxpayer dollars and get nothing done. Meanwhile, Hamas is rearming. And that's what they're doing. And everybody knows it. I mean, Israel knows it. Anybody with half a brain knows it. And it's going to be tougher because the Philadelphia corridor is held up. And it's going to be tougher because we stopped sending in all of the ridiculous humanitarian aid, which of course went right to Hamas, thanks to Joe Biden et al., insisting that we do that, and the rest of the world following the leader of the free world. We have a different story now in the White House, which is why Israel stopped sending in all this humanitarian aid, or letting it go in. But we have a terrible failure of leadership right now in Netanyahu. You see it because Trump has said, do whatever you want to do. And there is nothing being done. And I say that not, of course, I don't know the ins and outs, and I'm sure there's a lot of stuff being done, but there is no direction right now.
Now, wrapping up, we only have a few minutes left. I think the most fundamental thing is the fact that the failures that have happened, as we said, are not some sort of inept or some sort of like Israel's inability to actually do what is necessary. It's the refusal to look at the world as it is and look at the threats that Israel is facing and do what is necessary to sort of combat them, both before and after October 7th. And until we can sort of figure that out, there is not a single thing that can sort of save Israel. It is similar to, if someone doesn't want to sort of think about their life, they don't want to eat food, they don't want to sort of sustain themselves, there is no, you can try to sort of force them to eat food or sort of force them to like do what is, take the necessary steps to like live, but you cannot force them to think. And in a similar way, if it doesn't matter who is in the White House. If Israel doesn't want to defend itself, it doesn't matter if Trump says you can go all in, if Israel is pretty much just standing and not even knowing what to do with that. Alex, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
So I recommend reading a little bit more about the Alma Center and also Habit-Nissim, which is General Amir Avivi's think tank. And I do also just want to, our new how do you say chief of staff is from the Shirion. What is that? That's the Armored Corps, right? And there's two objectives to the Armored Corps. We haven't had one of those guys, I think, in about 40 years, right? We haven't had a chief of staff from the Armored Corps. And the main weapon of the Armored Corps, one of my favorite weapons, is the Merkava. Classic Israeli design. Perfectly, strategically. It's a beauty to see her go, especially the Merkava 5. You just see it so graceful, it's so wonderful. It knows exactly what it was supposed to do. And there's two objectives, right, of the Shirion. Lead the way for the infantry. This is what they say. Lead the way for the infantry to the front line. Help clear the area of enemy troops. 2, block the enemy's armored force and destroy it. And I have to say, I want to see it. I really do. I really want to see those beautiful Merkavas. Just go. I'll go to one of my favorite things to do is to go to the Latrine Tank Museum, right? And it's just in the center of the country, and go and really see some of the just go and see these guys. I mean, these beautiful machines. And so with that, I really wish us good luck.
Thank you, Alex. Michael, any last thoughts, and where can people find you?
Yeah, well, let's hope we see some action over here and some real policy and decisions. I'm hopeful. I'm not expecting it, but one can hope. And as Alex said, it's not a strategy. You can find me at LinkedIn, Kaufman with 2 Fs.
And with that, thank you guys for joining me today. Thank you everybody for watching. We'll be back tomorrow with another episode of The Daily Objective and the reality show. Alex, did you want to jump in?
Somebody's saying, it doesn't matter. Somebody's saying something about the Merkava. I'm not even going to bother answering, okay? Because I'm bigger than that.
Well, thank you for that, and bye-bye.
Bye.